The Applied Consent Communication Study, or ACCS, is a mixed methods in person study that was really focused on understanding consent difficulties, differences, and challenges in autistic and non autistic young adult undergraduate students. The reason we did this study was that we noticed when we were conducting 2M2X, which was our study focused on mood concerns during the transition to college, that a lot of participants were bringing up challenges related to romantic and sexual relationships. This then led us to do a bit of a deeper dive into this concern, including a focus group, where we continue to really get the message that sexual consent is tricky, especially in the absence of explicit verbal consent, especially when it comes to reading body language or trying to sort of read minds and understand confusing and often inconsistent norms, and especially when folks don't get good sexual education. So, we designed this study to explore these concerns that have been noted qualitatively in our own data, in our own focus group, and in other literature. But to really do this exploration with mixed methods, so both quantitative and quantitative study, to really understand what are the difficulties in sexual consent for both autistic and non-autistic students. What are the differences in these difficulties? What are the differences in satisfaction with sexual education throughout childhood? What are the differences in relationship history, in childhood trauma, in sexual abuse, and how do all of these things relate to one? So, in this study, we had a group of wonderful undergraduate participants who came into our lab. They first completed a vignette component. So, what that means is they got these short fictional stories where characters met up and eventually hooked up or engaged in some type of sexual activity. And after just about every sentence, the participants were asked to rate how likely they thought each of the characters were to consent to a list of various sexual activities. And what this allows us to do is look at changes over accumulating consent cues. So, as participants get more and more cues, all of which were nonverbal, by the way, like body language, stuff like that, nothing sort of spoken, um, we were able to see how does their confidence in characters' consent change over time, and how does that change in confidence differ between autistic and non-autistic students. That was the first component of participation. Then we did a semi-structured qualitative interview. So I was able to talk to each and every participant and ask them a little bit about how did they make those decisions in the vignettes? What were sort of the green flags, red flags? What made them think characters were or were not going to consent? And how does that apply to real life, right? Like, how do they think that people figure out consent in everyday romantic and sexual relationships? How was sexual education growing up? Any kind of experiences they want to share there. And because this was just semi-structured, we also were able to explore in depth whatever things participants really wanted to share more about as well. And then finally, there were a few short surveys that participants completed. This allowed us to get a little bit more information on opinions about various consent issues, um, background, including childhood trauma, sexual abuse, satisfaction, sexual education experiences, and modeling of consent and bodily autonomy in their families growing up. Um, as well as we had already had them complete as part of the screening process a measure of autistic traits. So we got another measure to sort of get some more background on autism status that we could use for analyses as well.